I've always felt sorry for those two Zebedee brothers, James and John. Here they so wanted importance that they could taste it. To sit forever right next to Jesus in the new kingdom. That was their goal. So they were just being forehanded in trying to reserve seats. There's nothing wrong with that, except that their plan went belly up. Why? Because, as it happened, they were overheard making their request. The conversation got recorded, and it didn't sound good, not to anyone's ears. And in the end, that unfortunate interchange caused the exact opposite effect of what they had intended. Instead of the rest of the world taking note of their preeminence, the other disciples were gagging because of the brothers' presumption. You can hear them muttering under their breath, "You big pigs, I wanted that myself." And besides, one just doesn't ask for something like that. That would have been an honor that was meant to be bestowed. We follow that rule of etiquette. If, for example, you want to hear a compliment about yourself and it comes unsolicited, fine. But let someone hear you angling for it. How did you think I did? It's all over. As the rest of the disciples could tell you, there are some things that are better left unasked. Besides, getting back to the Zebedees, the fact that that request was made in the first place seems so childish. Trying to place dibs on which side of Jesus they would sit. It reminds me of my days of my youth, summer vacation, car trips. We were a family of 4 girls with a blue Ford that seated 3 in the front and 3 in the back. And you don't think we had fights over who got the front seat? Over who got to sit between my mom and my mother? And once that issue was resolved, we invariably had a second argument to settle, which was who would get stuck sitting on the hump in the middle of the back seat with no window. It made for some lively exchanges, believe me. And I must confess, sometimes they led to physical combat. Once I remember my mother tried to rein us in by asking that question, girls, what would Jesus say? And I remember my little sister pommeling me while responding, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Oh, the joys of being a mother. Maybe the importance of one's place in relation to others is something that's inherent in the human condition. Maybe it's part of who we are. Who knows? Yet before we allow the Zebedee boys to get completely off the hook, there's another element in the conversation that is of more serious concern, and it's in their timing. In today's text, Jesus had been announcing to the disciples seconds before about how he was soon going to be mocked, spat upon, flogged, and even killed. And then he told them that he was going to rise from death 3 days later. So wouldn't you think that comment would be fodder for a response? If not with sympathy, then at least with amazement. But no, instead, James and John ought to talk about themselves at this point. Quickly and effortlessly, they fast forward right past the subject of Jesus' pain and death, and they immediately try to line up their afterlife positions of privilege. It would be like calling your children together to tell them that you had just been told by your doctor that you have a terminal illness, and their immediate response is, "How much will you give me for my inheritance?" That would hurt. But notice how Jesus responds. He stays unperturbed and appears to be totally non-judgmental. He might have raised the roof, saying, "Can you think of no one but yourselves, you losers? Does my suffering mean nothing to you? Get away from me." Yet listen to what Jesus does instead. In good rabbinic tradition, he answers their question with a question. It reminds me of Woody Allen's quip. Why does a rabbi always answer a question with a question? The answer? Why wouldn't a rabbi answer a question with a question? The brothers ask if they might sit on either side of Jesus in his glory, and Jesus simply responds by asking them a second question. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink? One commentator put it this way: Jesus doesn't put them down. Jesus doesn't turn them down. He raises the bar. He accepts them where they are and for who they are, insatiable ambition and all. But notice what he does. He simply challenges them to redirect it. It's as if he is saying, of course, you want to feel important. Everybody wants to feel important. So see what you can do to make other people know that they are important. Right then and there, he explains to them that as disciples, their rules of life are different from most people's rules. He says, whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. It reminds me of a story one of my teachers cited about a bicycle race in India. And in this race, the object was to go the shortest distance possible within a specified time limit. And so when the gun sounded, the cyclists had to do the best they could to stay as close to the starting line as possible. Racers were disqualified if one of their feet touched the ground. And so they inched forward just enough to keep the bike balanced. When the time was up, the person who had gone the farthest was the loser, and the person closest to the starting line was the winner. Imagine how it would have felt to be in that race without understanding the rules. When the race began, you'd pedal as hard and as fast as you possibly could, and with the passing minutes, you'd be thrilled because you'd look behind you to see that you had outdistanced everyone else in the race, only to discover at the end that you were, in fact, the loser because you did not understand how the race was won. Life is like that. We start out assuming that one's success is determined by one's importance in relation to others. And then our lives are over, And Jesus asks us the same question he asked James and John. Did you drink from the cup of another's suffering? Did you use your life trying to be ambitious for anyone other than yourself or a member of your family? Did you try to serve your neighbor? That's the question on our final exam. When Jesus asked the Zebedee brothers if they were able to drink the cup, you heard their answer. They said, yes, we are able, sure, no problem. But the good news, the astonishing news, is that they really were. They said yes, and they meant it, and carried through. As a point of fact, James and John, for all their humanness, passed with flying colors. They made high honors. Historically, this James was the very first disciple to die for Jesus. And John ended up by being the disciple whom Jesus asked while John was standing at the foot of the cross to be a son to his mother. Why? Because Jesus trusted him to use his ambition, his blessed ambition, for his mother's sake. About 10 years ago at a church I served in Townsend, Massachusetts, we had a visitor walk through the doors. I knew her by name, and admittedly, I was excited by the prospect of a new member. And I must have had that look on my face, which pastors get, and you know exactly the one I'm talking about. It says, "Welcome, come join us." Because as soon as I saw her, she was very quick to disabuse me of my hope. She said quickly, "I came to listen to my coworker sing." End of story. Except it wasn't. Even though she was very clear about her intentions, still I rued the fact that of all Sundays, she was there on Pledge Sunday. Clearly not the best day to lure a visitor. But she'd already told me, she'd already set the limits. I said, okay, and we went ahead. And the service ended, and people were going out to their cars, when all of a sudden the financial secretary rushed up to me and said, "Do you know this person? I've never heard of her before." And she handed in an annual pledge. Holding out a card, he said, "Look at this." 1 year later, Lindsay told her story to the congregation. As fate or God would have it, she'd had a birthday a week before she attended our church. And she explained that her 50th had been an unusually sobering occasion. Because as she looked back over her life, she realized she'd done it all. She had a perfectly fine job. She lived where she wanted to be. She had 3 healthy grandchildren. But all that she could see ahead of her was variations on a theme. And so she asked herself, is this all there is? And that's why she had filled out the pledge card the year before. Because she asked, why not? What do I have to lose? I knew what my life would be like if I just kept going. Why not see what this faith business is actually about? And if I put my money down on it, I'm likely to stay with it, at least for a little while. Well, with the exception of the choir, she joined about everything there was to join. And in so doing, she decided to live her life by a different rule, Jesus' rule. Summers, she helped host children from Chernobyl. She went on a mission trip to St. Petersburg to volunteer in orphanages. And this past year, in January, she gave one of her kidneys to a single mother of a 9-year-old girl. You see, Lindsay herself was 9 when her own mother died. And if she could, she wanted to spare this girl what she went through at that age. She was asked, "Can you drink the cup that I drink?" She said yes, and she has. And her question, "Is that all there is?" evolved into an answer. This is who he is. If you want to draw near him, if you want to sit next to him, if you want to love him more than serve him, and experience for yourself his transforming and awesome power. The message this morning is, don't sell yourself short. Don't conclude that you have served enough already, or that you are too tired to serve anymore, or that you can't serve because you are no saint. Because Jesus is asking you again today, this very morning, to be more than good, to be more than good enough while you are alive. He is asking you to be great. Can you drink the cup, he asks? If James and John could, you can. For just as we are like those Zebedee brothers in their foibles, we are like them too in their potential for selflessness. It's only a matter of directing our will. Which question are you asking today? Serve us? Or are you asking for service? Therein lies all the difference. Amen.